The two men stumbled into town as the sun was setting. Their shadows stretched through the gates long before their arrival. Neither looked well. Hunger, thirst, fatigue, and a whole host of other malignant factors hung over them like a weight. After escaping the Cyclops, they had carved out their existence by hunting and foraging out scant meals. Not enough to sustain a grown man, let alone two. Even Kurt's belly was starting to slim down. After night in the wilds, it was good to be in town. Grant, the mercenary, looked about as they moved. The town was filled with elves from the nearby forest, traveling dwarves down from the mountains. Even a few of the beast folk wandered about. Ever coin and goods were being traded. Oh, bugger. That was going to be a problem. They were hungry and had no shelter, and they had no coin to pay for either. Not good. Seeing the look in his eye, his merchant charge gave him a reassuring smile. Dropping onto a barrel, the plump man pulled off his shoe. Tucked inside was a small coin pouch. Smart man. He gestured to a tavern down the road a bit. "You spent much time in this area?" "Oh ho 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 ho," laughed the merchant. "I've got a few contacts in this town. No, I've got a lot. You probably couldn't toss a coin down these streets and not hit an associate of mine. Come now, dinner is on me tonight. I know a place that a friend frequents. She may know something about this curse." He tapped his shoulder gingerly. Silently, he followed the merchant down the road. A gaggle of children ran before him, giggling and laughing as they went. They were smaller than he thought they should be. How young were they? No, not young. Just a mixed breed? Human and dwarf, perhaps? That could explain it, especially as a dwarf man came following behind them, with a human woman yelling at the children to slow down. When they stepped into the tavern, a full-blown ruckus greeted them. Every corner of the room was filled with members of every race, eating, drinking, and just enjoying themselves without a care in the world. Even the staff was laughing. The noise reached its crescendo as a bard started to sing. A woman with short, pointed ears led the two men to a table where they were joined by an orc and a lizard man. Or was it a lizard woman? It was hard to tell. "Oh, you two look worse for the wear. What brings you to town?" "Ah, you see, I'm a merchant, but we lost our cargo when we were attacked by a minotaur and a cyclops," the fat man explained. "Then you should hire a good mercenary," the orc responded as he flexed his thick arms. Huffing and puffing out his chest, Grunt boldly stated, "He's got one, me." "Not a very good one, if you lost all your cargo." A good point from the orc. For mercenary, their reputation was their career. A moment later, the elf waitress brought a large pot and several bowls. "Why don't you join us for dinner? The stew is perfect here," offered the orc. Welcome back to Mythical Phylogeny, Aspiring Adventures. I'm your guide, Jason. In your travels, I am sure that you've come across many races: elves, dwarves, gnomes, orcs, and beast folk. Now, the origins of various races is going to be a long discussion, to put it mildly. Yet that journey we shall begin here today, and the best place for that is by talking about hybrids, a result of mixed race couples. I know it sounds odd, but we can use it to set a foundation on the other races. Now, I'm sure that you've met a few half-breeds in your lives. You may even be one yourself, or you've fallen for someone that hails from another race, and you are curious about having a family with them. How did such things occur? First thing we need to understand is, what is a race? A species. I know, that sounds like a stupid question, right? You know what a race is, but let's get a definition. A species is a group of organisms that can breed and share the same genetic or similar genetic information. A race is often used interchangeably here, but more commonly it's used to say a subgroup within the species. Now let's jump right into the question about Earth. Are there any mixed races beings on Earth? Well, Earth only has humans, right? No, you've got other animals here, like say a horse and a donkey. When you get the two to breed, you get a mule. Yes, a word for a half horse, half donkey creature. Okay, so we quickly show that a mixed race can occur. You also can get them between a few other animals, like a tiger, which is a lion mixed with a tiger. But every single one of them has the same issue. They are sterile. They can't have children of their own. A genetic dead end. Why? Genetics. Horses have 64 chromosomes, while the donkey only has 62. You've probably covered chromosomes in school, but I want to go over them in more detail here. Chromosomes are the genetic structure which DNA forms during mitosis, which is cell division, or meiosis, the process by which they make gametes, eggs, and sperm. They are numbered according to their size, except for the XY chromosomes in mammals and the WZ one in birds. I'll get to those later. Larger chromosomes hold more genes. You get one chromosome from each parent. For humans, we have 46 chromosomes, so 23 from each parent. During meiosis and mitosis is when the number of chromosomes is important. They will match up and divide so that there is only one copy of each in each of the cells. If there is a missing chromosome, important genetic information will be missing from the child. Information for making a heart or brain could be among them. That sounds fatal. There's a long list of complications that can occur from a missing chromosome. This is also why mules don't have offspring. When you crossbreed a horse and donkey, you end up with 63 chromosomes. 32 from the horse and 31 from the donkey. While closely related, they each have their genes organized on different chromosomes. During meiosis, the chromosomes divide randomly. The mother and father's chromosomes end up all mixed together. What happens if by some incredible chance that all the mother's genes are divided from the father's? Mathematically, this is a very rare event. About 4.6 times 10 to the minus 10th power, roughly. But it is possible. In this astronomically extraordinary condition, then a mule can have an offspring. Now this also explains why other species can't crossbreed. There's two main genetic differences for a hybrid to form. The reason we need true chromosomes is because genes are taken from both of them. Without both copies, you'll be missing those important genes. When races are closer related, their genes are distributed in a more similar manner. The one exception of this comes from the sex chromosomes, the X and Y, or the WZ. One chromosome is able to cover most of the genes necessary. In female mammals with two X chromosomes, one of them is partially disabled, but not completely. The Y chromosome contains the copies of the important genes which are still active, and a few which are also needed for the initial development for a being to be male. The WZ is unique to some birds and reptiles. It is similar to the XY except that it is the male, which is the WW or XX, and the female is the WZ, backwards from what you get with mammals. We will need this later when we talk about bird folk. So what is the point of all this rambling? It gives us the condition for the hybrid. We need two copies of every gene, so a similar number of chromosomes or genes is organized. What does this mean for our mixed races? Oh, they need to be a close genetic relation, maybe even the same species. Most races are divided into two sections. The humanoid, which are humans, elves, and whatnot, and the demi-humans, or the beast races. Some groups will offer additional factions, but usually they'll match up with the beast races. Let's take a look at the dwarves and giants first. These are actually the simplest. Dwarfism and gigantism are well-documented traits in humans. These are just usually more extreme cases for most of it, both of which can be genetic or caused by the environment. To have a population where these traits are dominant is an easy occurrence evolutionary, so all we have to do is isolate them for a few thousand years until those genes become the majority in the population. Voila! No problem. But this is a problem with elves. Elves have humanish features, but pointed and much longer ears. Yet, they also live much longer than humans. Centuries, millennia. Their lives can span those and more. This can create a problem. If you try that isolation trick that worked for dwarves, the timeline will need to be much, much longer. Millions of years almost. That is enough time to allow for two populations to form from an individual species, with a different number of chromosomes. Yet, that long life may be what allows the human-elf couple to have a multi-generational family. Remember what it took for a mule to have an offspring? A lot of luck. But what if you live longer? With a longer lifespan, you get more chances, so in theory, an elf-human hybrid should be able to have children, but it could be difficult. Now, what about orcs? They are often said to be a strain of elves, corrupted or separated. If they are still a variation of an elf, and If the elf can breed with a human, then the orc should be able to as well. But grandchildren, you might not have as long enough lifespan to get that to occur. It could end up being very rare. Of course, this could all be skimmed over if the elf-orc base has the same 46 chromosomes as a human. If that is the case, the hybrids could be uncommon but possible. What about the beast races? A cat girl, a lizard man, a mermaid, a birdman? The races which originate from animals and other primates, well, no, not possible. Not if they evolve naturally. Genetically, cats, lizards, and birds are too genetically different to even be remotely possible. Doubly so with birds and their vastly different sex chromosomes. This takes them all out, right? Well, history, mythology, and religion are filled with crazy lunatics who have created hybrids with science and magic. This is something we are looking at here, and a long topic, short, but let's look at the option of crossbreeding after the experiments. The experimental race would need their genes organized to ensure that the proper ones exist with no counteracting ones and dozen other genetic issues. It is difficult to say the least. Still, we need a consistent number of chromosomes. If we would happen to have that same 46 number, then a hybrid of such a creation is definitely a probability, no guarantee though. It would be a little more difficult with insect hybrids. Insects and humans have completely different embryological development processes, and you would have to rework the entire system before you even begin. It would be a long process. With tree folk races, there's such a wild difference between plants and animals, from cellular structure and organ systems, that a hybrid would be absolute lunacy. All of this falls apart when we meet the demigods. Mortals with one parent being a mortal and the other a divine or demonic being. These beings don't have physical forms. Do they even have genetics? That's a hard thing to argue. So, what could explain this? Gods are easy to talk about here. In most cultures, they believe that it is the gods which created the mortals. If this is true, then that spark of creation could also work to augment and create the offspring's genes. But demons don't work here. They don't have that spark of creation. They corrupt. So what I'll propose here is the child of the demon will really only have one human parent whose genes have been partially altered. As the wise man Tolkien once said, evil cannot create, only corrupt. I'll be going over this in more detail next week. So, what about dragons? Yeah, I need to do them a little bit out of order. Dragon-blooded warriors are frequent in mythology to boot. Who wouldn't want the blood of such a monstrous beast flowing in their veins? For many sorcerers, it is this bloodline which fuels their magical powers. Somehow, this has to be possible, but dragons, they do not have that spark of creation that the gods do. So, could they corrupt their partner's DNA like a demon? I don't think so. There is a debate about how dragon magic works, but most people will agree that draconic magic is of primal or arcane sources. It is potent in wild magic. To produce a hybrid of a dragon, I would propose another option. The dragon's chromosomes are flexible and can be reconfigured sufficiently to mimic a partner's, copying it even. If their genes are able to sustain a child alone, then it would make sense that the child would be a dragon, and not the human. There are many stories of dragon taking human forms at will, and their children being human. So I think that the malleable DNA from a dragon makes the most sense. The merchant Kurt swallowed another mouthful of food. Oh, so good. After a week of berries and barely any fish, this was a blessing. Their dining companions had switched out. The orc and lizardman had finished their dinner and moved on. Now, a beautiful woman had joined them. She was engrossed in conversation with his companion. Her hands kept stroking Grant's muscular arms. With every word that escaped the mercenary's mouth, she would giggle and laugh. Ah, she was smitten. To be young again. He was the same way with his wife when they first met. Kurt wasn't paying attention. His eyes kept sweeping the room for his old friend. The room was filled with so many couples just the same. Seeing a woman stride in black clothing, he got up and made his way to her. A smile and a question played over her slender face before guiding them to the table on the far side of the room. Together, their attention was turned to the curse that marked Kurt's shoulder. Thank you for watching, aspiring adventurers. I'm not sure how many of you are interested in such a topic, but we'll need it before we can look into more detail about how the other central races are that we'll be meeting in the future. This does let us establish a baseline and see if they are related and share a common ancestor. Please return next week where we should be tempting the succubus. Until then, be safe and careful, aspiring adventurers.